Every day we are surrounded by persuasion in advertisements, political campaigns, social media posts, and even conversations with friends. But have you ever stopped to think about what actually makes a persuasive message effective? Today, we're not here to persuade anyone about a specific issue. Instead, we're going to take a closer look at persuasive speeches themselves, what they are, how they work, and the key techniques speakers use to influence an audience. By understanding the structure and strategies behind persuasive speaking, we can become not only better communicators, but also more thoughtful listeners. Everyone knows what this is, right? A pumpkin. Well, you've actually been misled. This is not a pumpkin, it's a basketball, and I can prove it. Michael Jordan played basketball for years, and this is the exact ball he practiced with in the ancient times before rubber was invented. It is round, orange, and about the same size as a basketball. It even bounces a little. If you look close enough, you will see this pumpkin is regulation size and almost identical to an official NBA basketball. And check out these lines, perfectly designed for grip and control. Now, obviously this is not a basketball, but for a moment I had you thinking about it. That is the power of persuasion. It can make almost anything sound believable if presented in the right way. In my demonstration, I used ethos by referencing Michael Jordan to build credibility, since he is a highly respected and well-known figure in the world of basketball. Mentioning his name helped create a sense of trust and authority, even though the statement itself was exaggerated for effect. I used pathos by incorporating humor and surprise to engage the audience emotionally. The unexpected twist that the basketball was actually a pumpkin made people laugh, helping them connect with the message by using a fun technique to influence their perception. Finally, I used logos by pointing out logical similarities between the pumpkin and a basketball, such as their round shape, orange color, and the size. By describing these visual and physical traits, I gave the audience concrete evidence that made my claim sound more believable. Now that you've seen how persuasion can turn an ordinary pumpkin into a basketball, let's take a closer look at how it all works. We're going to dive deeper into ethos, logos, and pathos so you too can use these techniques to make an idea sound convincing.
So what is persuasive speaking? Persuasive speaking is the process of influencing others to do, think, or believe something different through speaking. And the interesting part about persuasive speaking is that the effect happens both in the moment and afterwards. A good persuasive speaker uses words and rhetorics to change someone's attitude, belief, value, or behavior. And it's used everywhere, from politics to advertising to motivational speaking and in your everyday conversations. To craft an effective persuasive speech, first determine whether your goal is to change your audience's belief or to inspire them to take action. Regardless of your objective, your speech should rely on ethical, factual evidence, inviting your audience to reconsider their perspective, never to pressure them or manipulate them. Here are a few questions to ask yourself to ensure a good persuasive topic. Can I speak to my audience enthusiastically? Can I support my arguments with solid, well-supported facts? And can I relate it to my audience? Now that you know the purpose of your speech, there are two basic building blocks that can make up an effective persuasive speech: an appeal and your argument. The first, your appeal, is a request made to another person with the intent of influencing them. For example, Michael Jordan uses this pumpkin, and this pumpkin is a basketball, and I will tell you why. That's an appeal, a statement meant to grab your attention and invite you to think differently. Second is your argument, which should contain emotion, logic, and ethics. This part of your speech is way more than just taking sides of an argument. It is presenting a credible narrative that is meant to convince an audience that your perspective is both reasonable and realistic. Use this to make your presentation come to life. An appeal by itself, without rational proof, is just a call or request, whereas an argument uses reason and facts to back it all up. To sum it up, persuasive speaking works with both reasoning and feeling, which leads me to the three key ways we can make that happen in our own persuasive speaking, which is using ethos, pathos, and logos.
Now that we've defined persuasive speaking, it's time to move on to the three rhetorical devices, starting with ethos. Ethos is established in order to gain the audience attention. The presenter giving the speech must sound sincere and knowledgeable and use trustworthy sources. Ethos is used to establish credibility, authority, and believability. in order to give an audience confidence to move in a certain direction. Once an audience is listening and focused on what is being said, the ability to convey your points is much easier. This can be accomplished by the manner of your presentation. Speak slowly and steadily, so that the cadence of your presentation invites your listeners to focus. Be articulate without sounding overbearing or pushing. Help the audience think that you are one of them. Sound sincere. In other words, connect with your audience on their level. One key point of ethos is credibility. Good character and credibility establishes the speaker as someone who the audience can trust and respect. A speaker should be articulate, clear in presentation, and present an aura of confidence in the material. The facts they present should be from recognizable experts and should not be extreme. The facts should be specific. By being reasonable and realistic, the speaker will avoid creating negative reactions from their audience and will establish a common bond. Another key point of ethos is authority. Authority conveys that the author has knowledge or experience necessary to speak on the topic they have chosen. Authority is demonstrated by sharing professional background, experience, and credentials. This should not be done without appearing to be above the audience, nor does it have to be done all at once, but can be introduced sporadically at key moments of the presentation. Once you've established authority in a subtle but clear way, the balance of your presentation becomes more credible. The last key point of ethos is believability. When getting an audience to believe your message, it is critical that they trust you. Keep your presentation relevant and important. Tell a story. Use examples to which the audience can relate. But most of all, talk to your audience, not down to it. As an example, ethos is commonly seen in commercials trying to sell certain products. Brands will claim that their product was tested and approved by professionals such as a dermatologist or a dentist, to further convince the audience to purchase their product. If a professional says it is so, then it must be true. To conclude ethos, it is established through the speaker's credibility, authority, and believability.
At their core, humans are built entirely upon the emotions they feel, and it is often said that our feelings are the most genuine paths to knowledge. Many persuasive speakers attempt to weaponize this, and the idea of persuading audiences using their own feelings as tools is the rhetorical device created by legendary Greek philosopher Aristotle called pathos. Pathos is a technique that targets the audience's feelings, aiming to create an emotional connection to the message. Within a persuasive speech, pathos has been seen countless times, with incredibly powerful speakers like Franklin D. Roosevelt, Martin Luther King, and even Nelson Mandela being able to move audiences of millions because of their ability to elicit emotional responses to the ideas that they're presenting. Pathos is even seen in advertising. When you're at home on your couch watching TV and suddenly get a commercial for a charity foundation asking for just $1 single to feed starving kids in need, you are significantly more likely to fork up your spare change if the commercial can create those strong feelings of sadness for the kids in need that you have the ability to help. That is pathos in action. Take for example our demonstration with the pumpkin earlier. Using ethos and logos, the debate can be made on whether the pumpkin is truly a basketball or not, but without any emotions attached, who really cares if it's a basketball? At the end of the day, it's just another orange thing that doesn't matter in our lives. But what would happen if we add emotion? What happens if I tell a story that the fact of the pumpkin being a basketball saved my life, and that without it being a basketball, I could never be complete? What if I told a story with so much emotion that through the screen you could feel my pain? Would it still be a story? Or would the realness of my pain make itself just a bit more real? At this point, the question is no longer whether it's a basketball, but it's whether or not you're going to go against your moral compass. That is the power of pathos. But of course, there's just one piece of the puzzle. Pathos without anything to back it up is no longer a debate. It's just a feeling. You can't persuade with pathos alone. It's because of that it needs to be backed up with some type of logic. It needs to be backed up with the next rhetorical device called logos.
According to Joshua Gunn in his book Speechcraft that we use in class, logos pertains to the rules of reasoning and how we use those rules to structure arguments that appeal to audience's thought process. To break this down, logos is using logic or facts to try and influence someone to do, think, or believe something. Like how earlier, JC pointed out all the similarities between a pumpkin and a basketball. If it's round like a basketball, orange like a basketball, and the size of a basketball, it's a basketball, right? There are countless ways you can go about using logos, but here are just a few. The first one is using facts and statistics from a credible source. Although not persuasively speaking right now, a great example of this is the quote that I used earlier. This really goes hand in hand with ethos because it increases your credibility. Another great way to use logos is by showing cause and effect. For example, if you're persuading someone to think that school start time should be later, you could say something like, If school started later in the morning, students would get more sleep, which improves focus and academic success. Furthermore, a great way to incorporate logos is by acknowledging and refuting counter-arguments. Addressing opposing viewpoints can help you show the audience that your argument is stronger. For example, if you're speaking on recycling, a great way to do this would be something like, some argue that recycling doesn't make a real difference, but studies show it reduces landfill waste by 25%. Of course, when you're using logos, you still must be speaking ethically, so you need to be honest about your facts and information. This means not making up any false information and getting your stats and statistics just right, and giving credit where credit's due. Don't claim any data to be your own when someone else put in the work to get it. Beyond this, it is important to avoid exaggeration, false cause, and slippery slope arguments. Being very clear about your data and your arguments builds trust between you and the audience and shows that your argument is built off reason and not manipulation.
Through speaking alone, people can have a direct influence on your personal thoughts. Psychology plays a major role in this. From playing with your emotions like fear, happiness, and sadness, to convincing you that something must be true just because a speaker used credibility, it must be true, right? Persuasive speaking is meant to influence you to lean one way or another. The kind of speaking that has a tug on your own psychology. It can happen in subtle ways too, and most of the time you won't even realize that you're being persuaded, or you won't even realize that the speaker is trying to persuade you. It just happens. There are 3 strategies that every professional speaker uses to persuade their audience: ethos, pathos, and logos. While we're not professional speakers, in the demonstration we used ethos by referencing Michael Jordan to build credibility, pathos by using humor and surprise to engage the audience emotionally, and logos by pointing out logical similarities between the pumpkin and the basketball. These are all ways that we were able to persuade you in one way or another to make you feel a certain way about this pumpkin. That just goes to show that it doesn't even have to be someone high in power to convince you of something, and it could really just happen in an everyday, casual conversation too. If we can sway your idea on what may or may not be a basketball, just imagine what professionally trained speakers are able to persuade you about on other things, such as religion, politics, or other aspects. All just because they know how to have an effect on your mind and emotions, and how to provide credibility for the fact that they just change your whole mind on something. These strategies will be used on you by countless people and probably already have been before. What or who are you going to allow to persuade you?